Shiur. Right, so we're holding at the beginning of Perek 12, everybody, on page Yud. So this is a Shiur in Shiur Tanya. We're holding at the present close to the beginning of Perek 12 on Omid Yud of the printed Shiur. And today is Tuesday, Tammuz, Toshin Ein Beis. Tuesday, Tammuz, Toshin Ein Beis. Good. So we saw that following the principle of told us by Kohelet, by Shlomo HaMelech in the Sefer Kohelet, that Zeh Liumas Zeh also Elokim, that the Eibishter made everything with, as it were, two parallel and opposite, nonetheless, sides. The side of Kedusha and the side which we say was Klippa, and we call it also Liumas Zeh, based on that project, the other side, as it were. And whatever we find in Kedusha and in sanctity, we find in the Klippas a similar thing, but opposite, and with the as we're moving in the opposite direction and purpose of how it is in Kedusha. Therefore, even though it's parallel in its inner content, in its makeup or content, but it's in an opposite direction. So we saw that just like the Nefesh Elokis is made up of 10 spheres, Lamaila and the Elam Shalyanim, the 10 spheres are a source for the 10 powers of the Nefesh Elokis. In the same way, we have 10 in the Nefesh Apahami, the Nefesh, which we saw is from Klippas Nega, in the body and in the dam of the mensch. Similarly, there are 10, as it were, basic power states or characteristics. What they are called the Esa, here the Alter Rebbe called them the 10 crowns of impurity, the 10 crowns of Tumah. What they, as it were, are the conduct and the basis of our animal soul. And then he began going into detail. He told us that there are 7 midas, right, in the nefesh, in the animal soul, 7 evil emotional characteristics, midas. And then he said that they are elementarily built together in the 4 elements of Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Ve'ofer, fire and air and water and dust. Those 4 elements, as we discussed them in Perek Aleph, right near the end, the 4 evil elements, they are the basic elements of the emotional traits of the animal soul. And he said that it also has seichel. The animal soul also possesses reasoning power, which is called seichel. And he said the seichel is moyelidon, it gives them birth, and it is divided into 3. What they are, similar to what we found in Kedusha, Chochmah, Bina, Radas. And he said they are the source of the midas, the makor of the midas. And he said because the midas, because those midas meaning the emotional traits, or those emotional traits are lefi erech ha-seichel. They are according to the value or the value judgment or the status, as it were, of the seichel. Ki, for example, hakoton choshek, a small person, a small human, how do you call it, desires and runs after choshek. Choshek means he lusts for and longs for oyev, and he loves and shows his desires and affections for dvorim ktanim, small things, how they call trivialities, which have no real value to them, a very, very small value judgment. Lefi, why is that? Shesichloi Koton. His seichel is also small, the kotar, and it's reduced and not far-reaching, and it's unable, because of that, lahasid dvarim yikorim yesa mehem, and it's not able to grasp. His seichel can't reach up and grasp dearer and better things than that, and that's why he's into small things, because his seichel is not able to grasp better and more, which would imply that as he grows up, then his desires get a bit better, because as he grows up, then he's able to appreciate better and richer things. So instead of wanting small things which have no real value to them, trivialities, then he will want better things. That is, he will want nice houses and Cadillacs and who knows, all that type of thing. In other words, it'll be the physical values, but it'll be with a bigger appreciation of them. So now this leads us to a necessity to go a little bit deeper into the makeup of the whole system of powers as they are in the animal soul, compared to how they are in the holy soul in the Nefesh Elokis. And that, if we notice carefully, in Perek Gimel, when the Alter Rebbe told us about the powers of the Nefesh Elokis, of the divine soul, then he told us that there were, he told us are you okay?
No, fine, thank you.
He told us that there are 10 powers, and he said, first of all, there's Chokhmah, Bina, Vadas. He told us about the brain abilities, Chokhmah, Bina, and Das. And he said they are the source point, or the mother points of the Midas. And they give birth to the Midas. They give rise in a way that the Midas are there born out entities. The emotional traits, how they are in the animal soul, are completely dependent for their whole kilui, their whole revelation in our lives. They're completely dependent on the Chokhmah, Bina, Vadas. Meaning that if you didn't use your Chokhmah, Bina, Vadas in a way of relating to the greatness of Hashem and reflecting about it and deepening your mind in the greatness of Hashem, then you wouldn't have Midas, emotional traits, as they are in the divine soul. You just wouldn't have them. And that's how we saw carefully stated in the language over there in Perek Gimel. Here you notice it's almost an opposite way of describing it. When he comes to the makeup of the powers in the animal soul, he begins with the Midas. He said, first of all, there are 10 powers, but he said they are the 7 Midas rays, and they are elementary, as we pointed out yesterday. They are based on the basic elements, which would tend to imply that you, as a made-up person and a constituted person, how you are in your existing as a physical entity in this world, you're made up of the elements. So your emotional traits are also made up that way. In other words, that it's like a natural inborn thing in you that you have these 7 Midas. And they didn't necessarily depend on anything to be there. They're there amidst what they are. You have these, so, and that's key to the basis of your whole animal soul. That you got these 7 emotional traits. They are followed afterwards by the Chokhmah, Bina, Vadas. And he says, even though the Alter Rebbe uses the expression that the Chokhmah, Bina, Vadas give birth, Hamolidon, here we have to understand that he means the word the giving birth slightly different than what he meant over there. If we say that you've already got the Midas first, and they are there before we even talk about the Seichel, means that ultimately they're independent, basically, of the Seichel. And then when we say the Seichel is a mocker, or it gives birth to them, we have to say it means in a different way. It shows a certain direction or value judgment to the innate emotional powers, and because of that, since they would be just meaningless, and that's what happens a lot in the life of a person who lives according, they just disagree with one another and pull him in different directions and never really get anything organized. He just gives in the whole time to his his emotional desires and trays and what you might call caprices of his nefesh habamiyat, and nothing really gets anywhere. If we say that the seichel at least comes along and says, listen, maybe go in this direction because that'll be better and that'll be better for you and it'll bring you more desire and more satisfaction, etc., etc. Maybe we'll organize the matter that if we'll think a little bit and we can indicate it would be better for you to go that way. So in that regard, the midah has been born, because before it wasn't really meaning anything. Now it means something. It has some basic approach based on the general idea of what the midas wanted anyway, namely to look for their satisfaction and their benefit and the fulfillment of their basic requirements. That's what the emotional traits are all about. Remember, like we pointed out yesterday, the seichel is like a certain purchase type of thing which tacks on to the midas. Of the midas are the main determining factor, and the seichel just goes on. But it's called a birth point in a way, because without that they're just in a state of confusion, and that's the way they are. But here it's maybe worthwhile just putting in a brief parenthetical remark that this leads us to the more deeper idea, according to Siddur teaching, that the difference between the divine soul and the animal soul are the two main worlds in Atzilus and L'mayla me'Atzilus, what we call Olam HaTikun and Olam HaTohu, the world of maintenance or fixture, how things have been fixed, and the world of chaos, which is called the world of Tohu. Now the world of Tohu was prior to, in Seder Revelation, it was prior to the world of maintenance, the Olam HaTikun, and it was mostly midas. It was based essentially on the concept of midas, and it was, like we just said, it was chaos, because every midah just said what it wanted, and there was no real guidance, there was no real shitta that the Moichin gave rise, first of all, to what's proper to want, and do we need a midah right now, and maybe we should have a midah, but only for certain purposes. However, in Torah, it's not like that. In Torah, the midas are, as it were, governing. They are the main power in Olam HaTohu, and everything there is not careful. His slabs had to go to entry of the oilers inside the cable. But everything is like confused. So that's the shitta and the way of the nefesh habamiyat, coming as he does, by way of nefila, by the way of collapse, from the world of confusion. Therefore, he's basically a confused entity, the nefesh habamiyat. He's basically how do they care how the old expression, have a crazy kid? You know, he's just wanting powerfully. He has maybe abilities. He has maybe things he could do, but it all never really gets into a well-ordered and meaningful pattern. So therefore come along the midas and they say, look, we'd like this and we'd like that. So the seichel, as it were, as we pointed out yesterday, adds a certain shitta, a certain method, how you're going to get that particular thing and how's the best way to get it and how you'll be able to enjoy it better, etc. That's the way the seichel functions. And therefore it's just interesting to notice that the Alter Rebbe, I saw in a sefer from the Rebbe's father, the Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, that he brought down. It's interesting to notice that the Alter Rebbe, when he referred to the 10 powers of the soul of the nefesh habamiyat, he called them crowns. We spoke about that yesterday, because of this insisting ability on their part. They're called crowns, and he said there's 10 crowns of misabusa. Well, misabusa is an Aramic word for the word uncleanness or tumah. However, the basic root word of misabusa is the root samach aleph beis. Samach aleph beis, that is the basic root of the word of misaba, meaning tumah in Aramic, and samach aleph beis is sak. Samach gimel, that is the name of the Shem, of the tziluf of the Shem Havaya, which is Shiur Tanya. That's the name. Mashing the tziluf of the Shem Havaya, which is Shiur Tikun, is Ma, Mem Hey, which is the tzilach of the Shem Havaya Ba'alefim, or Milui Alefim, and the Shem Havaya, how it is according to Hayin and Avov in the middle, but that's Sad. And so that's what the Alter Rebbe goes out of his way to use a basic root word which makes Sad to indicate to you that we're talking about basically the picture how it is in Tuyah. The Nefesh Abamis is Tuyah. And therefore his first insistence is Midas, and his Seichel gives birth to the Midas, and that it makes them have at least a little bit of meaningful existence. Otherwise they're just confusion and self-conflicting, as we saw. Good. Okay, so that's one. The other Indian that happened in Olam HaTikun, Olam HaToyu, which is Olam HaTikun, which is the world of maintenance, Olam HaTzilus as we call it, was the Moichin. They became the main deciding factor of everything that occurs in the life of the person or in the world of Atzilus, so that all the Midas are there, but they are called Toildois Chabad. They're called the born children of Chokhmah Bina V'das, because they, without the function of Chokhmah Bina V'das, you don't use Midas in the Nefesh Elokis, and you don't really see the purpose of them. The whole Indian of Chokhmah Bina V'das is like not just a guiding, but a bringing them into being. They would be completely behelim if not. As we pointed out at the beginning of the class, you wouldn't really have them. You wouldn't really have emotions in Olam HaTikun unless you had the Seichel. Here in the Nefesh Abamis, you've got already the Midas first, and they, as it were, they push around the Seichel, and they ultimately guide what the Seichel is going to do. Because the purpose of the Seichel in the animal soul is just to justify, help, and bring into some sort of order, being what anyway the emotions tell you that they want. So that's the name where the Alter Rebbe mentions, first of all, the Sheva Midas, and he says that they really come. Where do they come from? They don't come from the Moichin. In Nefesh Elokis they do. Here they come from Arba Yesodis. They come from Eish Ruach, Mayim Ba'ofa, how it is in Klippa. That's where they come from. And they're there of their own right, and they're elementary, made as they are, of the four basic elements. That's the basic status quo. Apart from that, you also have the Inyan from Midas. You've got Chokhmah Bina V'das, and he said which is divided into three, and he uses the word Hanechlach L'Shalosh. Now in the Nefesh Elokis, when he talks about Chokhmah Bina V'das, he says that the Seichel is Kalu Mishleisha Dvorim. It's made up, as it were, of the three. And I've seen certain people that they want to say that the word Kalu means also that they are interwoven one with the other. Mashkin, when I say they're divided up, they're made up into three sections. Nechlach, Chokhmah, Bina, V'das. They don't really have much relation one to the other. The Chokhmah says what it wants, the Bina says what it wants, and the Das, we don't even know how Das fits in here. It's a little hard to understand what sort of Das is really applicable. Knowledge and Das is applicable in the when I say knowledge, that's not really the genuine translation. Like the bounding over and the iskashus to the matter. How does that really exist in Klippa? Because in Likutei Torah and in other places, and so there's many other places, it's apparent that the Klippas don't really have Das. That they have Chokhmah Bina, but they don't really have Das. And here the Alter Rebbe does mention it. So, however, he mentions it in reference to how the Moichin do have a little bit of function with the Midas, that they sort of guide them, as we pointed out. So therefore, I saw a note from the Rebbe Rashav where he says, what is it, we say that the Klippas don't have Das, and here it's written that they do, because the Alter Rebbe said that they have three different, albeit not very united, aspects of the brain, Chokhmah, Bina, V'das. So he points out like this, a very fascinating difference, that when we say Das, the emerson concept of Das is not just the ability to give rise to the Midas and to arouse the feelings within the soul, but the function of Das is also to distinguish ultimately where the truthfulness of our understanding in a general way should lie, in what directions to go. What I mean, it's like what you call, maybe we could describe by the word intuition. But sometimes we notice that you've got a whole picture in your mind of certain inyanim. Then you have a picture of maybe different ideas, which in some way present different pictures than what your first ideas did. Then you've got to be able, according to the depth of your understanding, to see where the real ultimate truth lays between the two extremes, or between the two differing opinions sometimes. And therefore we find sometimes in, rarely albeit, but we do find it in the Brisa and in the Mishnah. In the Mishnah occasionally, and in the Brisas more, we find that sometimes we have what's called Das HaMachriya. You'll sometimes have two Tanoim, but they differ quite extremely between between the other in certain matters. Then you have a third opinion, which is like a middle point. It's not kilo that one, and it's not that one. It's like a third opinion, but as it were, verges the two extreme opinions together, and like as it were, find something from that one and from that one, and makes up a third opinion. That's called Das HaMachriya, the one who swings the issue between the two extremes. And that occurs in Brisa quite a bit. In the Mishnahs it's also there, and that's called Das HaMachriya. That's the inyan von Das. The real emes of power of Das in our makeup, in our brain, is the ability to distinguish and to, in the brain itself, to feel and sense where the truth is. And it's a very high power which is really beyond reasoning, but it's very much there in the makeup of the Nefesh Elokis. In other words, the Chokhmah produces an idea, Bina develops on it. Das tells us the ultimate swinging of all the details. Where is the real basic line? Where is the ultimate decision of what is going to be the truth in the matter in a final way, which can be shot to halacha, if we're talking about halacha, can be shot to understanding, to ashkofa, right way to look at things, the right way to understand a certain point in divinity. It can be many, many things. It could be a practical point in halacha, as we pointed out. So what the Rebbe Rashab tells us that the Klippos don't have. When the Alter Rebbe says here, they are nechlat, they're divided one from the other, Chokhmah, Bina, and Das, he said they have another type of Das. And that is that Das, in its more simple sense, is the ability of the moyach to go down and stir up the middle. And that's what the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Gimel, that there's an aspect of Das which leads to the more permanent revelation of the middle. So to a certain extent, your Nefesh Abamis does have that. And that is that sometimes we notice that when you're crazy about something, to use the expression, and just by the way, the Rebbe once said that he was crazy about the Mashiach. Do you know that? It was in Toshim Hey that the Rebbe said that he's crazy about the Mashiach. Yeah. And there's a whole, it's all connected with a whole famous sikha. Maybe in these classes I'm going to be giving about my experience that I can tell you a bit more about. But anyway, whatever, is when you become crazy about a certain midah, that's already the das of that midah. In other words, when you become really given over to a certain emotion, and you can't separate from it, and it's coming to a very full expression in your soul, well, that's das. That's how das is under the moichin, chokhmah bina, and then das, and it brings down into the emotion. So the Klippos do have a type of das of that sort, because we notice that Davki, in the Klippos, people get very worked up, and they get very involved and everything, and it's like a wild type of ability to become, as it were, tied over and bound to maybe more than one emotion at one time. Then you become really sort of confusedly, insistent and crazy, and insist on your opinion, etc., etc. That type of das the Klippos do have. That they do have. And that's what he means here, that ever Chokhmah Bina Das, how they are in the Klippos of the Rebbe Rashab points out at great length in one part. It's not real das. It's a das which is only shy to stirring up and bringing into a more powerful and permanent expression of the emotions. So that's the picture then that we have in the Nefesh Abamis. You are essentially how do you call it? If at the best, you're what we might call a kosher behemah. Now, why would I say that? Because we notice that the behemoths, they go according to, they don't really have a mind which in any way leads or gives birth to their midas. Their midas are there, and that's the way they act. And sometimes they can show a little bit of shrewdness in order to get what they want better, in order to be taught better, to do things. Like we said, it's a das aniknet, like a purchase das. So the Nefesh Bahami is her name is the right name. Bahami is, she's like a behemoth. She has, first of all, the midas. They are the basic picture. She has a leaning towards a certain use of Chokmah Fila, Bina Fila Das, but that doesn't exist in the stam of behemoth. Therefore, we call it a kosher behemoth, a better behemoth than an ordinary one, but nonetheless a behemoth, a human behemoth, if there's any such possibility. That's the Indian of the Nefesh Bahami is. Therefore, everything goes. So now says the Alter Rebbe that what really happens is that your midas are lafi erach haseichel, according to the value judgment, or what you might call the price of your seichel. Lafi erach haseichel. Now, in Kedusha he said that the seichel causes to birth out your emotional trait, and here he's saying that your emotional traits are lafi erach haseichel. Now, what does that mean? That means that you've got the emotional traits anyway. What the seichel can do is show them certain things, and like what you might call a market display. It shows certain things and says, "No, you guys, what would you really like? Let's go for this. This is really a geschmack thing. It's really a good time." And so the brain power in the animal soul will produce a whole case, sometimes with considerable cunning and with considerable, entrance into detail, why it's worthwhile going in that direction. And that's what we call to give birth to the midas. But it's according to, you've already got the midas. You didn't give birth to the midas through your seichel. You've decided you want a certain thing. The seichel will say, let's do it this way, because you see that's better. In other words, it's like a price judgment. This is a better erech. It's a better erech that way, and therefore go that way. So therefore, the koton, the small kid, his brain doesn't know any more than a certain price range. His brain knows only things which are small, trivialities. So he shows them to the emotions. The emotions say, "Oh, that's what I'm being shown. Okay, let's go for that. That looks pretty good. We'll go for that." But really, it's trivialities and small things. As he grows up, Pirish, when his mind's able to grasp, Pirish, his brain of the Nefesh Abam Yisrael is able to grasp more, well-to-do things, gedolei ha'erech, things which are already bigger, and not just pechusei ha'erech, but things which are gedolei ha'erech. Then he'll go after that. When he gets older, then he will worry about how he's going to get the best car, or he's going to get the poshest telephone that there is in the world. Everybody's using telephone, but he's going to use a telephone which will beat them all, and he'll be able to just press it, and he'll be able to have 50 internet, who knows what. Hashem should guard us from all these things. But, that's what the error, the value judgment changes, or the basic emotional tray is already there. And the mind is not trying to give birth, or to alter, or to show emotional trays, listen, maybe you shouldn't be that way, Baklal. It's just trying to feed them a value system that they will be attracted to for sure. But it knows for sure they can be attracted. So therefore, a koton, he is somebody that his brain simply can't do any better than that. So since he can't do any better than that, that's what he wants. That's the way he goes. And that's why he uses the expression, a koton is choishek. He really goes for oyev, and he likes dvarim kitanim, trivialities, pechusei, they don't really have any value to them. Lafisha sichlei koton, his mind and his ability to appreciate it's limited. But kotzer lahazik, and it's too short and too small to grasp things which are better and more dear and more expensive in their actual erech. As he grows up, then that's what he'll do. He'll go for the more dvari ha'erech, the yekorim ha'erech, he'll go for them because that's what he will be presenting, the midas that are anyway there. And he said, "V'chein miskayes or miskatzev midvarim kitanim," and the same way he flies into anger and he gets very, very offended about small trivialities, small midvarim kitanim. V'chein bis peiros, and the same with self-pride, and with how they call peacock pride. V'sharei hamidas, he goes according to the things which are according to what his mind is able to appreciate, and the value system that he's able to present himself. So here we notice that it's interesting. The Alter Rebbe has dealt with the three main midah. He dealt first of all with Ava, which Ava is Chesed, things that you want, that's the midah of Chesed. Then he says he gets angry and he gets offended. Mishkatzef means to be like offended, to be really put off. Well, that is Gevura. That's got to do with the midah of Gevura. And then he said, "V'chein bis peiros." His peiros is, feeling that you really look good in front of everybody, and had he got a picture in the paper, the whole thing. He said, in self splendor, he said, "V'sharei midas." He's dependent entirely on his value judgment according to his development of his brain power. Not that he's really using his brain power to produce a whole new view of life. He's only using it to develop and present a value judgment to what anyway he's given into the midas right from the beginning. So that's the three midas of Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet. His peiros is the idea of really holding yourself to be important and to look important in the eyes of the people. How do you call it? To what's the expression? To strut, to look good. So he said that's also according to what his particular idea of looking good in the eyes of people is, whether it's because of a big achievement or it's a small thing. It all depends on the erech of the seichel. But not that the seichel is a producing power and a beginning power without which he wouldn't have those powers at all, or he wouldn't have the anger and others. He's got them anyway. All the value system of the mind just shows him how to develop. So that's a detailed picture that the Alter is given, and so we see that ultimately speaking, somebody who lives with the Nefesh Abami is, and he goes according to his animal soul, what people who haven't had the privilege of studying Torah and learning Tanya particularly and other basic documents of Chassidus, I guess that's the way they live. I mean, if we were just left after ourselves, then that's probably what we probably live according to our Nefesh Abami. The trouble is that we live according to our Nefesh Abami is enough as it is, even with all that and even with all the great gifts that we've been given of Chassidus, we still fall victims here and there to our Nefesh Abami. So we see that basically, if you're a Nefesh